Elizabeth Best,
Tom Harris,
have been presenting, hosting Ghosts of Boyfriends Past for over 2 years now.
2 years.
And
my gosh.
That's quite a long time for us to go without, and I'm saying it's a good thing. We've been well behaved. We've been diligent. We put our information, our knowledge, our expertise across a whole range of subjects.
Yes.
And we've done so well to leave penis size into like 2 years into this. Other podcasts would have been weaker. Other lesser podcasts would have gone to penis size
in
the first week. We did not.
No, we resisted.
Now, Elizabeth, there is a question ambling along here somewhere.
Okay,
now, the business line is, when it comes to penis size,
okay,
the business line and the ready line is, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
It's how you use it,
yes,
etc. Elizabeth Best.
Yes.
Is this true? Or
women, I cannot
Or does penis size actually matter and we all need to freak out?
I cannot speak for all humans.
Right.
I can only speak for myself.
Sure.
Mum, shut your ears.
Here we go.
I don't feel like it matters, right?
Right.
I only feel like it matters if somebody is self-conscious about it. Whether that be, I've been with people who are self-conscious that it is too large and that it is not large enough.
Right.
But the only time it's ever been a problem for me is when it's been so large that it hurt physically.
Interesting.
But then we communicate and talk about it and figure out different ways to make that not hurt so much. Different positions, different angles that we can go in, more lube, I mean, there are so many different ways to solve any problem that you have with this.
Absolutely. But does the old wisdom hold true that it's not size doesn't matter? Size
of the wave, it's the motion in the ocean.
So we can carry that into the 21st century.
I think so. Yay. Like even people who have aren't as well endowed as others. Like I think it's only ever a problem if they're so self-conscious about it that they can't connect with the act that they're doing at the time. Like if anybody's self-conscious about a particular part of their body, that's going to really hamper the kind of connection that you have when you're having sex, which is what's going to turn it into bad sex.
So a bit of, I don't know, self-acceptance, right?
I mean, look, easier said than done. Like, holy shit, I need a bit of self-acceptance and stuff like that. But I just think if it is something that you're self-conscious about, then have chats with people about how you can overcome that. Because honestly, I have never looked at someone and gone, oh my God, his penis is really small, or oh my God, his penis,
Good.
Like,
that's
good
just good to hear.
That's just not something, and, like, even when it's been brought up amongst my friends, I'm just kind of like, was the sex good? Like, I don't care what size someone's appendage is. No one goes, how big were your tits? I mean, they might. I'm not. I don't.
Elizabeth Best. Oh boy.
And Tom's like, I've got news for you, Liz.
I've got some bawdy conversation. Anyway,
I just don't care. Like, it's about confidence. It's about self-confidence, and it's about connection.
Beautiful. So.
And mindfulness, because if you're worried about your body, you can't be mindful while you're having sex, which means you're probably not going to get off.
It's very true. So at ease, everybody at home.
We've done it. We've attacked penis size. No, not attacked. That's a bad word.
Yes.
Tackled. We've tackled tackle size.
Never attack the penis. I implore you. So it does. So the old line remains true. It's not how big it is, it's how you use it.
Yes.
So figure out how to use it. Get him working for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whew. And breathe. Welcome to Ghosts of Boyfriends Past, everybody. I'm Tom Harris, and that's Elizabeth Best, as you've already heard off the top. You join us for a main episode.
Yes.
With a guest, and as is seemingly the norm on this show, our guest is calling in via Zoom.
It's the way of the future these days. So our guest this week also has a podcast called Songwriter Trysts. She's a singer. She's a songwriter. Her name is Rae Leigh. Rae, thank you for joining us.
Come on down.
Hey, how you doing, guys? I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that conversation, really. So many thoughts.
What's your opinion? What's your opinion?
I mean, I feel like it's kind of asking a guy, does it matter if her vagina is really tight or loose? Like,
yeah. Do you know what? I know people who would talk about that, though.
Oh, God. Yeah, probably.
I just don't, like, no one sits there and goes, like, no one goes, well, her labia were really long. Like, I don't know. Like, it just... have the sex and deal with it. Like,
well, I think you should be, for me, I think, like you said, connection is the most important thing. If you don't have a connection with that person, why are you having sex with them?
Yeah.
And if you have a connection with them, you want to connect intimately, and sex is so much more than just penetration.
Yes.
And if you go into the tantra sides of things of sex and what that actually is, that intimate connection with someone, you don't necessarily have to use your appendages. And if you really want, you can get a sex toy, you know, and use that within your intimate practice. So
this is the thing, communication and connection. If you've got those down pat, it doesn't matter what you're using. You're going to figure out a way to get off.
Yeah, like, once you communicate, once there's a connection, everything else will basically fall into place.
And even if that connection is just physical, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be in love with someone or connected in that way, but just connected in a, here are the things. Yeah, here's the chemistry. Here are the things we're going to do to each other's body. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Spot on.
So that's my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have also experienced the too big it hurts, though, and I actually just said it's not for me. That was a long time ago, but I always said, I'm not doing that. So
yeah. Look, I mean, sometimes that shit can be intimidating. You're like, whoa, what am I meant to do with that?
Good Lord. It's like a baguette.
Yeah. Like, I was young. I hadn't really had that much sex at all, and it was just like a disability. I think I felt sorry for the guy, but I was like, there's no way that's going anywhere near me.
Yeah.
And I'm a tall girl, you know, so I'm not tiny by any means.
There you go. So Rae, singer-songwriter, Liz mentioned off the top, there must be something for you to plug, I'm sure.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, I do release and record my own music as an independent record label and publisher. So I do have an EP out, and I've got a whole bunch of singles. I've got a single, which is my first award-winning song that I wrote. It was won an award to have a production and music video made, and that is coming out on the 3rd of December this year. It's called Just Like That, and it is pretty much just about female empowerment. The song tells a story about a girl who hooks up with a guy at a bar, has a one-night stand, turns into a long-term relationship, which turns out to be emotionally abusive, and then she leaves. So, like, it's a fun story. It's an empowering female story. And I was really honored that I won the competition and that they've put so much effort into it. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out. And then I have multiple shows in December as well, with the Songwriter Trysts having their first Songwriter Rounds showcase on the 4th of December in the Gold Coast. And then I'm also performing with my band at a Logan showcase as well for original artists.
And we can put all of the links to where you can find all of the information about that stuff in the show notes if you are interested.
Congratulations, Rae.
That's incredible.
Many a finger and many a pie.
No, but that sounds really
That's
sus.
a different dating story. You brought us stories today, Rae. One can assume, but before we jump into the deep end of storytelling,
we got rules.
Rules must be covered.
Okay.
Not just for you, for everybody. Don't worry. We didn't see your lovely face pop up on the screen and go, oh, okay,
this
no
girl
threats.
needs the rules.
No threats. So please no threats on microphone if you can help it. And also a big one is an alias. If you're talking about other people with real names and real places, coming up with an alias with them and not too similar to the real name is a
I
hot
made
tip.
that mistake. You'll slip up all the time if it's too close to the real name.
This is hard. All right, I'm going to write this down.
Yeah. And look, the other rule is mostly for other people at home, is that if you figure out who Rae's talking about, don't be a dick. We don't support doxing, and we just like don't ruin it for everybody else, because someone's coming here to tell us a story out of the goodness of their own heart and to help everybody learn something. So there's no need to spoil it for the rest of us.
So I don't know how you're going with crafting an alias over there. If you need help, I'm sure we can come up with one.
I've just made a note so that I when I'm talking about someone, I know which person I've named them. So.
Yes, good. But that's my headmaster talk out of the way. Rules and regulations scene 2. Okay. Everyone's sitting quietly on the floor, cross-legged at home. So over to you with your story, Rae.
Yeah. So situate us. Where are we starting? Where does this all begin?
Well, my dating life, I went to University of La Trobe. I studied biomedical science, as you do before you become an artist.
Yes.
So my dating life would have to start there. And I actually, from other podcasts, and if people know me, I actually have a serious history of child sexual abuse. So I avoided all men, like on purpose. I had a lot of rules around standards. I played too hard to get anything to kind of just avoid having relationships. So I really only actually had 3 proper boyfriends. Now I say proper boyfriends, this is relationships that lasted longer than 3 months. So I'd say went on a few more than just a few dates. And I actually heard someone tell me once, and I think it was on one of my podcasts, they said you need to have 3 boyfriends. The first one is to break your heart. The second one is to learn what you don't like. And the third one you marry. And that's exactly what I did. I had the first one, which I thought was, the fantasy, and it really did break my heart, and I was distraught afterwards. And then I had another boyfriend, which was my first, I would say, adult relationship, where I definitely learned a lot about what I don't want in a relationship. And the third one I married. So I have written down an alias for him, but I don't think I need to necessarily use an alias for him. Because
it's up to you on this one, yeah.
Everyone knows who my husband is.
I've run out of men, guys. I've dated more than 3 guys and I didn't marry them. I forgot to do that bit.
Well, maybe you're still learning what you don't want.
Yeah. Oh, look, I know what I don't want now. It's just that I can't find anyone who doesn't have what I don't want.
Maybe you need to marry yourself. I've heard of someone in the Gold Coast marrying themselves.
People who listen to the podcast regularly know that I'm single by choice purely because I enjoy my own company and I treat myself better than a lot of other people I've dated.
Honestly, I loved being single. I never wanted to get married. I never wanted to have kids. I had a pretty horrific childhood. I was a middle child. And I just didn't see the benefit for me in having children or getting married and having the whole white picket fence thing. I say that as I'm sitting here in my own home with 3 children and a husband in the other room. So often you don't get what you want, you get what you need.
Yes.
But I definitely encourage, and I tell my friends this as advice, is always have a couple of years, especially as a young adult, just on your own, because you have to learn to love yourself and you've got to learn to love your own company, like you said. And I've just seen so many people since high school all the way to now, I'm 33, that they jump from relationship to relationship and then they change. It's like, oh, this guy, I really like him, he's into gardening. I'm like, you've never gardened in your life. Like, no, I love gardening.
Yeah, it's my passion.
Yes. And they change what they like to eat, and like everything about who they are changes to adapt to this person they think is perfect. And it probably brings up a lot of insecurities and stuff, but from my opinion and what I've witnessed about other people as well as my own thing, it's like really knowing who you are and having the confidence that you are okay being single. If you go into a relationship, knowing that if they leave you, you're still going to be okay. It gives you a confidence that you're never going to be able to get anywhere else, because if you've never been single and known that you're okay single and enjoy your own company, you're going to be a lot more clingy and be in a bit of fear of that person leaving. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
As someone who I wasn't single until I was 32. I went in back-to-back relationships till 32, and I've been single since then. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I was so terrified for so many years that I couldn't be alone. And you know what? I bloody love it. Being alone is great.
Don't get me wrong. I struggle to be alone sometimes as well, but
yeah
with my thoughts, they're evil, but I keep busy doing stuff that I love and being passionate about the things that I love. So yeah, and everyone struggles to be alone sometimes. Anyway, so
we don't need an alias for hubby. Hubby can have a shout out. He can be named.
Yeah, he's Rob, my husband, Robert. And funny story is that's the same name as my dad. And I really did marry my dad. It's really weird. I married a younger, smarter version of my father.
You sound at peace with it rather than like any major conflicts. Cool. That's okay.
Yeah, so I won't use an alias for him, because anyone who you look at anywhere online, his stamp is there because he is my manager, my husband manager.
I think you're allowed to name your current husband as well on air. It's probably allowed.
He gets lots of praise. Okay, so my first real boyfriend, let's go back to number one.
Yeah.
I was living in country Victoria and I'd been to this youth camp and I met this guy. I'm going to call him Tristan. And Tristan, when we first met, when I was younger, because I was really tall, people always assumed that I was older. And when I would tell them how old I really was, they'd always be like, oh, no, you're not. You're a liar, blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of started lying about my age so that people wouldn't call me a liar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like I wouldn't say I was 12 or 14. I'd be like, oh, I'm 18, just because I was already really tall. And that way I didn't have to defend my age. I was like, I'm a teenager. Why would I lie about my age at 12? Like, anyway. So I met Tristan and I told him that I was 18 and he was 18. I was really only 14. But I just told him I was 18. And because we got on really well and it was great. But he fell hard in love at this Christian youth camp. And I was a daughter of a pastor's kid, daughter of a pastor. Yeah. So I was a pastor's kid. Yeah. And so that was like the environment I grew up, if you know the church life. It's very isolated. There's a very one-way belief, no sex before marriage. Everyone gets married at 18, because they just all want to bang. And it's kind of sad. I've watched so many people get married at 18, divorced by 21, then remarried at 27, and like sometimes kids are involved and that's even worse. There's a whole nother story around the Christian teachings, but that's what I grew up in. So, Tristan was totally like in love. And after we'd left, we became friends. I think Facebook was around then. It might've been like MySpace or
Yep.
This is how old I was at the time.
MySpace, MSN Messenger.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but we kind of stayed in touch. But he just got his license, so he was up for big drives. I lived 4 hours out of Melbourne. He lived in Melbourne. And he would come down on his weekends or just randomly drive 4 hours to the country, to my home to catch up with me. And it actually took him a really long time to convince me to date him, even after I told him no, and I told him my actual age as well, which shocked him a little bit. But so that was kind of my first relationship, and he, his dad was a property developer, and they had a lot of money. So when I moved to Melbourne, I went to university, and I kind of actually became like an adopted child in his family, and we spent Christmas together, and so we dated on and off for at least 2 years. So maybe I was 16. My age is going, but yeah, so there was an age difference. But yeah, so he was big into fitness and things like that, but he's a really full-on entrepreneur, millionaire by 25, started his own cleaning business. He was colorblind and somehow like convinced a doctor to sign off on him being able to get his pilot's license. Oh, he just was a very resourceful person. He never took no for an answer. And so really what he needed, like we were really good friends, but what he needed as a partner was like a housewife who was going to have his babies. He needed an assistant.
That's right.
Whereas at this stage, I'm starting my career. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to cure cancer, and I was going to become a rock star. This was my I was a very ambitious person.
It's a lot to get that.
And it's quite the shopping list to get through. Doctor, rock star, cure cancer.
And I was never going to get married or have kids. So like there were some real barriers. And this was one of the reasons I told him no for so long. I was like, it's not going to work. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. I've got a lot of things to achieve in my life because I'm very ambitious. And so was he. And I think that was where our connection was, is we both were very ambitious people and we both worked really hard and like loved to problem solve. So in that way, we were really similar, but we weren't compatible as a relationship. But he, like I've said, he's not the type of person to take no for an answer. So he pursued me pretty hard until I just said yes to get him to shut up, really. And we did. So I learned a lot from him. He spoiled me. It was one of those relationships where I became friends with all his friends. I started going to his church when I went to Melbourne, and I made friends with all of those connections. And so I became very isolated and I didn't actually have any of my own connections. He didn't like my friends that I'd had from high school that moved to Melbourne. So, he didn't really let me go out. He was very controlling. Actually, talking about it now makes me realize how lucky I am that nothing else actually happened.
Yeah.
There was one time where, I had actually lost my virginity to a bet in high school. I was kind of a target, and one of the boys, the cool boys at school, had kind of bet one guy $20 that he couldn't. And anyway, so that's kind of like a sad story about that.
Oh, I'm talking about. I'm so sorry.
Well, yeah, that's okay. I mean,
God,
my virginity as a child was taken anyway. Well. So.
Yeah.
$20 at the time is not much, but So like, anyway, I had to tell him about that. And being a Christian, the whole idea of, you know, virginity, and it's really important. So that was pretty intense for him. And again, I told him about it. Probably, I think at the time, subconsciously hoping that would just get rid of him. But it didn't. He was like, oh, I'm going to stick by you anyway, and blah, blah, blah. So we stayed together, and then within the 2 years, I actually ended up taking his virginity.
Right.
Which was interesting, and obviously a non-event. If anyone's, you know, you remember those first moments of virginity. Mm-hmm. I think he would have been like 20, and like I was 19 when I lost mine. So like, you know, I feel like that's actually quite late. The more and more I talk to people, I waited a long time. I actually didn't have sex for another 3 years, outside of the bet one. There was the childhood abuse. There was the bet. Then there was the boyfriend. And then obviously nothing happened. But it eventually got to the point where I needed to separate from him, and he actually dumped me. And I don't think I would have been able to have left the relationship, because I was so ingrained in his world with the church and with his friends and his family. Like, his parents just absolutely did so much for me. That I just became so super comfortable. So when he broke up with me, it was devastating. Like, he really broke my heart, especially because he had ingrained in me that, like, you know, God told me that we're going to get married and this is our life, you know, and it had this full like prophetic. Yeah. And so it almost convinced me that this was meant to be, this is what God wanted.
It's a lot of pressure to have the Lord on your case.
God told me it's happening.
It's one thing to have your parents nagging you, but if it's the good Lord above, you know, who's demanding and dictating, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I've had a lot of misuse of the Bible over my lifetime, that's for sure. So yeah, it was hard. And then when we broke up and he left me, and like there were moments, like we broke up, I had about a year where I just got really into my fitness, got really into cooking, started to like get to know myself as an independent young adult at university. And there was one point where like I seriously was at the peak of my fitness. Like I was doing modeling competitions. I was a Miss World finalist, and he ran into me at the gym and got really upset that I was looking so hot, and we ended up dating again for 6 months. And that wasn't lesson number 2, was don't go back.
Only go forward.
Yeah, only go forward.
I love the way that you put that. He was really upset at how good I was looking. Well, I got to date her because she's too good looking. I can't just let this go.
I think we'd seen him at the gym, and all his mates were like ogling me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so there was this like possession. Yes, I mean,
did they bet him to date you again? Like,
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it was more about possession. Yeah, like, and I think as well, like that was something I learned from him and the next boyfriend, was that I, as a young adult, being a pretty young white girl, I got treated like a possession a lot. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but it took me a long time to realize what was going on. It's like guys have to own you and like possess you, and you have to be theirs, and like no one else can touch you, and they're proud of you, you know, like they wear you like an accessory. Trophy girl. Which, especially because of my abuse, I've never considered myself pretty. I don't have that identity in me. I also had really attractive friends in high school, so I didn't get the attention until I went to university, and I was away from these other really attractive people. I was separated from the lot, and so I didn't see myself as that way, so I couldn't even consider anyone would date me for the way I looked. So that kind of ended eventually, and it was devastating. I cried for days on end. I rocked up at his house one time in the middle of the night, and he was comforting, and he just said, you know, you've just got to decide who you want to be and wake up tomorrow and just be that. And I listened to him, and I said to myself, I want to be happy. And so the next morning I woke up and I decided I'm just going to be happy. And I was, and I went on a road trip and I started doing all my fitness and everything again. And I just got back into the stuff that I love, and I definitely had a lot of fun. And I was telling on another podcast that in university, having absolutely no money, I did have a rule around not saying no to a date opportunity, because it was still the times when guys would buy you dinner. And so it was kind of the only time I ate anything outside of cheese toasties or dim sims, or, you know, something really cheap and nasty for dinner. So, you know, I did go on a lot of dates, and I eventually was at a friend's 21st birthday party, and I met boyfriend number 2. I want to call him Damien. Okay. Damien, he was a real smooth talker. And I told him, and I was being cheeky when I met him, but I remember telling him that I was perfect. I said, I'm perfect. You don't need to look any further. And I had no real intention of like dating the guy. And we actually kind of casually hooked up like for quite a while. Like we'd meet up and go out and like dates and hang out, but we weren't like officially a thing for quite a while. And I'd kind of talked to him about it, but for him, it was not something he was interested in doing. I was like, that's cool. And so then I ended up going on a trip to the Gold Coast from Melbourne with my girlfriends. Had a random hookup up there from someone who knew me from the modeling world. And when I got back, that made him really jealous. And so then it became official and we started dating officially.
Something like jealousy to kickstart a good relationship.
Yes,
right? That's probably a good lesson. Don't let that be the beginning of a relationship. So like, again, he was a real encouraging and supportive person for me. But like at this stage, I'm really into my personal training and my fitness. I'm really into being creative and getting out there and networking, meeting people and just trying new things as an experience. One of my New Year's resolutions around this time was to say yes to everything as long as it was healthy. So I wasn't doing drugs or anything. I was like going to rock concerts and festivals and just anything that I had never done before or food I hadn't tried before. I just wanted to try stuff because I'd come from this really limited small country town. I didn't even know the difference between like Thai food and Indian food, like I was really naive and I just wanted to absorb the world and culture, and Melbourne was a great place to do that. And so here this guy comes along and he was really sweet, really encouraging and nurturing. And he, in public, treated me like the most important person in the world. Like he would just give me those eyes and the touch and just made me feel like the most beautiful, amazing woman in the entire room. But he wasn't into fitness and he ate a lot of junk food and he lived with his mum and he was very messy and he was really into World of Warcraft.
Sorry, I laugh because I had an ex who was very similar on all counts.
Okay. So it was interesting moving from like dating this guy and then it becoming official. And then he was a lot older than me as well. Not old enough, but I think I would have been like, I was 21. He was like 27, 28. So there's a bit of an age gap. And I was really over guys my own age because I was quite immature. And we started dating and I got to know his friends and his friends were all very different to him. A lot of them were like really well off, had their own businesses, really entrepreneurial. And he spent a lot of his time spending money to fit in with that crowd. Hence why living at home kind of worked because he could buy the clothes and do the stuff with his full-time salary. He didn't have rent to pay and he could go out and party with these guys. And it was big on the sort of appearance side of things. But then when we were at home, I did a lot to sort of help him out around the house. I remember like literally cutting his mum's lawn and like cleaning her house. And like, I just did so much because I felt sad for her. She had 2 grown sons, him and his older brother, both living at home.
Good Lord.
And it was messy and, they really didn't help out around the house, which was really sad.
There needs to be a rule. Like it's fine. I don't look down on people for living with their parents because who can afford houses these days? But if you live there, contribute.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, yeah, they were of a different culture. They weren't Australian, but yeah, like I just Anyway, so I remember doing a lot, and when we were at home at his place, and I'd hang around, he would just play World of Warcraft, and it got to a point where like I literally could be walking around naked in his room, and he'd completely ignore me, and it just got to. But when we were out, he still treated me really, really nicely. Or when we were around his mates, I was his princess. And that was where I think I started to realize like this guy doesn't actually care about me. He cares about how I make him look.
Yeah, there's a massive disconnect there.
It's huge.
Yeah. So that was that relationship. And we ended up taking a few breaks and again, like I actually really struggled to like break up with someone. I'm a really loyal person. Like I was one of those people that if I'm your friend, we're friends for life. And if you need me at 3 a.m. in the morning, I'll be there, and same with like relationships. I think because my parents, they're Christian, they've had a really rough life, but they've always stuck together. And I admire how they just work through absolutely everything together.
Yep.
I just had that mentality of that's what you do in a relationship. And I took that into dating when I really maybe shouldn't have been so loyal. So like we had a break. I did date a few other people. For some reason, I always ended up with footballers in Melbourne. I think that's just what you do. Good old AFL.
Yeah.
Great to look at outside of that. I don't know much about it. But I ended up going back to him, but I actually had already kind of moved on, but I just didn't know how to say no. And he actually then started going to the gym and working out. And we I think he noticed that I was separating from him and I was moving away. And once we officially broke up, he was at my gym at 6 a.m. in the morning, exactly when he knew I always went. And he got really, really fit and super strong. But and we'd hang out and we sometimes had dinner after the gym as friends. But he never did any of that while we were dating. He never exercised. He never, you know what I mean? He fully changed after.
He puts in the effort once there's a goal to be met or, it'll get you somewhere.
Yeah. And so that was kind of challenging. And there was definitely a beautiful connection. There was some serious chemistry there, and that's probably what I was holding on to as well. It was my first adult relationship where I was actually having sex with the person, and so that was a big difference for me. Yeah. Whereas previously it was no, we've got to wait until marriage, and we'd even had those debates, because there were a few times when I was with him, I was like, I don't know if I should be having sex with you. This is not normal from where I come from. And that was a real big issue at the start of the relationship. But yeah, so Damien completely changed. He ended up moving out of home and all this stuff. But I actually, by this stage, I was I'd given up on men. I actually was emotionally unavailable when I wanted to be single. And I really enjoyed being single, in and out of him kind of being around, but I was actually enjoying I was living in Melbourne CBD with one of my besties from high school. She's a super hot, gorgeous, half Portuguese girl who was working in real estate. I was working with a corporate company. We both had money, living in the city. We'd go out every Thursday night, ladies' night and cocktails. We had a lot of fun together. And I was doing modeling and I was, running a personal training business and doing massage as well. And I ended up meeting, I did a lot of Melbourne Cup race work, and I also did a lot of race car grid girl work. They don't do that anymore, but that was a lot of fun. And so I actually met my husband through doing that. His best friend was a race car driver, and he did all the marketing and promotion and website development and photography for him. He toured with him from the UK, and his mate had gone home, but he stayed in Australia and got work here. And he was friends with some other girls that I'd met through the race course scene. And so I'd put up on Facebook that I needed help with websites and getting some stuff developed. And then that's how we actually kind of met, through my friend recommending her through Facebook. So this is just before Tinder came out. So we kind of met online, but through a mutual friend recommendation. And he's 8 years older than I am. I was still 21, 22. And he had these big glasses on, and he was older, and he wanted to meet up so he could build me a website. And I was still in that whole, you don't meet up with old strange men from the internet.
Yeah.
Yes, you very much did not.
Overall, it's wise wisdom.
Now you order them to your door with your phone.
That's right.
Oh, yes. So I got my friend from uni, is this huge black African-American guy who I thought was the biggest, scariest looking guy I could imagine. And I invited him along to this meeting to meet this beautiful British white guy who rocked up and we had this meeting, and I quickly realized I had nothing to worry about. But
was it like that? This just seems like you turned up with a bodyguard. What did he think?
I rocked up with a bodyguard. Well, he was we were business partners in a website venture that we were working on. So it was kind of relevant that he came along. Yeah. But then we met up in the future one-on-one to have business meetings. But he was actually really cool. So he's told me now, later down the track after things progressed, he told me that he was big into he was at the strippers every night, dealing poker and hanging out with the guys, and all his ex-girlfriends were strippers. And he hadn't really, he was living the party lifestyle, and he was 30 years old, and his dad had him at 31, and he wanted to settle down. And he told me that it was the day that he decided to settle down, was the very next day was when he met me.
Oh,
wow.
Ooh, creepy.
Spooky universe.
So he's like the first girl that rocks up that looks
like, right, let's
she
go.
Looks good. She'll do. So we started like working together and becoming friends. But I was like, I'm emotionally unavailable. I'm not into you. And by the way, the previous 2 boyfriends I'd been with both dark skinned. I was not into white guys at all, especially Australian males. I think mostly because of my history, but that was just how I identified at the time of who I was into. And so he was really patient with me. Like we hung out as friends and we worked together and we did a lot of fun stuff together without actually dating. He would say that we were dating. I would say that we hung out as friends. And we actually had that debate for quite a while. And it got to the point where I was not talking with my parents at the time for some reason to do with the abuse when I was a kid. And he was in Australia from the UK with no one else around. So we got to Christmas. This is the first Christmas I wasn't going to be going home for Christmas. And so I was a bit sad and he was a bit of my white knight in white shining. What do you call it?
Knight in shining armour.
Knight in shining. That's what I'm saying. He was my white knight in shining armour. And he has a bit of white knight syndrome. And I was definitely in a space where I needed a savior. And so he took me on this big road trip and we drove all the way from Melbourne, all along the coast, all the little beachy towns, all the way up to Noosa for a Boxing Day party that he had a friend up there. And then we came all the way back down.
That's so romantic.
And for foreign readers, driving essentially from Melbourne up all the way to the east coast of Australia to just south of Brisbane, and then Brisbane on the coast, and then all the way back down.
Yeah, so like if you're looking on a map, it's just like from the very bottom of the right hand side to like 2/3 of the way up the top.
Yeah, good old whack of this wide brown land.
Yeah, so we did it over about 2 weeks of time off work, and and we really got to know each other, and we played with each other and flirted and teased, and it was just so much fun. But we were having like an intimate relationship by this stage. Mind you, we held hands for like 2 weeks before we had our first kiss.
It's cute.
But then by the time we had our first kiss, we were pretty much in each other's lives every day. And before that, with every other relationship, it was like, if I saw you more than once or twice a week, you're being too clingy. Like it was too much.
Yeah.
Whereas with him, all of a sudden it was like, when people say, when you know. I used to hate that. I hated that. When people told me that, I was like, oh, that's disgusting. But then it happened to me and now I get it. And that's one of those things I think you just don't get it until you get it. Yeah. But yeah, with him, it just felt so natural. It just went from either being your place or my place. And like, we just melded into each other's lives. And I know that you guys were talking about penis size, so I know this is okay to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, he was like the perfect fit for me. And the first time, it was like a puzzle piece.
Like a glove.
I love it.
Like a glove. But the first time we ever had sex, I swear there were actual sparks, and I like transcended. And it was the first time I'd ever had an like internal orgasm during intercourse with someone.
There you go.
That's connection. That's what I'm talking about. It's being in the moment. It's mindfulness. I love it.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, that was a pretty incredible, and that's just when it happened. Like our souls became one, and he's my soulmate and my best friend. And so, yeah, it took a long time. I convinced him that he had to actually ask me out. So we had an anniversary. So to him, we were dating for at least 3 or 4 months before that. Our official anniversary date is the 2nd of January because it took me that 2-week road trip to convince him that he had to ask me out for it to be official or exclusive.
Yes. It's not on paper yet, buddy.
It's not on Facebook yet. No. So, so we became officially together on the 2nd of January. And one of my rules that I had always had, and this is that I never wanted to date someone for more than 2 years. I don't know if you've met someone that has been dated someone for like 5-7 years, and it's like, and then at the end of it, it didn't work out, and they're like, oh, why did I waste so much time? Like, I did not want to do. I'm a very efficient person, and so is my husband. But I was like, if I don't know that I want to marry you within 2 years of being with you, I am never going to know. Like, that's
interesting.
That's
I've said that to exes and been accused of giving them an ultimatum, and I'm like, I'm not saying marry me or I'll leave. I'm saying like, if you don't know that you want to be with me for good, then what are we doing? What are we doing?
That's exactly right. Don't waste your life on people that don't appreciate you. Doesn't mean that like the shorter relationships aren't important and valued and bring something to your life.
Yeah.
But there is a difference between those moment connections and those forever connections. And the forever connections are fewer. You're not going to always meet people, and some people never meet people that are forever connections, and that's also okay. That's perfectly fine. Your life will be whatever you choose it to be.
And it's great that your personality type is like that, and your husband is the same. So you sort of you complement, your needs complement each other, your wants complement each other.
Absolutely.
And then to present day, you're like, I got me a husband and some kids. This is pretty good. It's nice.
Yeah, so after we started dating, within a few months, we actually fell pregnant with our first child. It was very, very quick. And I, being the kid of pastors, my dad wanted to backdate our marriage certificate so that my son wouldn't be a bastard.
Sure.
There was a lot of pressure. I was the first out of a large family. Like I've got 56 cousins. They're all married with kids. I'm the only one to have had a child outside of wedlock.
Wow.
So I'm the black sheep.
Well, I'm the bastard. Technically, my parents got married when I was 2, so it doesn't affect people.
That's right. Who cares?
I did some family research. Yeah, I did some family research. I actually found out that my dad's dad is a bastard because his parents never officially got married, or there's no proof of them ever getting married officially.
Yeah.
Which I thought was quite interesting. Yeah. Well, I try to be compassionate and graceful because I understand they come from a completely different era. But I did tell them that there was no way I was marrying the guy just because I was pregnant.
No, smart.
Yeah, and we do live in a world of pro-choice, and so like every child these days was chosen, which is a strange thing to think about. There's obviously the choice of abortion, and so if you think of it in that sense, every single child that is alive today is alive by choice, and that's just a whole mind mess up. But for me, I did definitely think about it initially. I think just in the shock of being pregnant and not expecting to be. But I also have an older sister who had been trying IVF for a very long time. And that was my second choice, was maybe I just give it to my sister. But I actually found out that I was pregnant 2 days before we were going to Europe for his best friend's wedding. And we'd bought tickets. We were going over together. I actually broke up with him while I was pregnant. I was hormonal and I was very depressed. That is, I now know the sign that I am pregnant is I get very hormonal and very depressed. But I didn't know why I was so depressed. And so I actually sat him down and I said, look, we've only been together 3 months. I'm a mess and I have no idea what's going on with me. And I just didn't think it was fair for him to be in a relationship with someone who had no idea who the hell she was or what was going on. And so I said, it's not worth being in a relationship with someone who doesn't know what's going on with their life. Like I was going to quit my job. I was going to go study a music degree. I was going to change everything. I said, let's just go to the Europe trip and have some fun and we'll go as friends. And when we get back, we'll go our own ways. And so 2 days before the Europe trip is when I actually found out I was pregnant. I was in the gym and some guy was like, are you pregnant? And I was like, they'd seen me around a lot and my boobs were looking bigger apparently. And
good to know they were scrutinizing your body that much.
You're welcome.
That's true. In the sauna. Yeah. That's exactly what you want after a workout. It's like, are you pregnant? I thought he was calling me fat. Anyway, I went and did a pregnancy test the next day and started Google searching some of my symptoms. And I was like, son of a. So I found out I was pregnant on my work break at work. And the first person I told was the girl who was sitting next to me because she was pregnant at the time. And she was super nice, but it was freaky. And also when I told my husband or my boyfriend at the time, he was over the moon. He was 31. He wanted a kid. This is the life he wanted. Yep. He wanted the white picket fence, the wife and the kids. But I was distraught. Like you've ruined my life. I was 23 years old at this stage. I had the baby at 24, but I was 23 when I fell pregnant. I found out I was pregnant. And it was really challenging for me. And it was a real life-changing moment, but the abortion wasn't really an option. Plus, when I went to the UK, I met his family. And even I met his dad and his stepmom, who they got married while we were over there as well. And literally within the first 15 minutes of meeting them, they were like, so we're ready for grandkids.
And you're like, well, I got news for you.
Yeah, I was like, if I wasn't pregnant, that would have been really awkward. But but I was pregnant. And so like they were all really kind. We were trying to hide it. I thought I was only 3 weeks pregnant. Turns out I was about 9 weeks pregnant by the time we were there. I just didn't know. Like all I'd done was a blood test and a positive, but I was feeling that the nausea was kicking in and lots of stuff. So we had to tell everyone over there because I was just a mess. It eventually came out. But I also got to meet his amazing family, and I thought, you know what, this guy is incredible. And if this is the family he comes from, like I feel like I can trust him. And it just really all worked together. Mind you, I'd still broken up with this at this stage, and he was pretty pissed that I'd broken up with him and that I could just do that to him. You know, there was a lot of issues. But for me, it was like once I found out I was pregnant, I was like, oh, well, now I know why I'm feeling this way. Whereas before, not knowing why I was feeling that way was like really messy. So yeah, I found I was pregnant. We had the baby. I said, I'm not going to marry you just because we're pregnant or having a baby. Mind you, we were looking at buying a house together because we got on so well and we knew that we could be amicable in that side of things. But I said, if we could make it through the first year of having a baby, I know that we can make it through anything life throws at us. Because honestly, if you're not a parent, that's probably, I don't know, I can't think of many things that's much harder than the first year of having a baby. First 2 years of having a kid is insanely difficult. So he proposed to me when I was 6 months pregnant. We had a 1.5 year engagement. I'd always wanted a long engagement. And we got married exactly 2 years and 1 week after he'd asked me out. Aww. And we had the baby exactly 1 year and 1 month after we held hands for the first time.
Oh, that's really cute.
You know, family on efficient steroids. we did it quick. And it's funny because I told him that I didn't want to marry someone within 2 years. Like, or, you know, I told him the whole 2 year rule. And later on when I've got this baby, and I was like, I had the 2-year-old. I didn't tell him anything about not having kids before I was married. I've stuffed up with the rules on that side of things. But we had another baby right after we were married. We fell pregnant again. We had 2 babies within 2 years of each other. And then we moved to Queensland, and then we fell pregnant with another baby. Each baby was born on a celebration night, conceived on a celebration night. We've got 2 Valentine's Day babies and 1 Christmas party baby. Guy Sebastian definitely has something to answer for that Christmas party baby, but not physically.
Yeah. Anyway. Whoa, I was like, has anyone told Jules?
Papers coming. Oh dear.
But yeah, so that's kind of where I ended up and how I ended up where I am now. But like, I didn't want children because, you know, when I was 4, my mum had an unexpected 5th child, and she went through a court case because she'd had her tubes tied. She wasn't supposed to be able to have any more children.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it was messy, and she got really severe postnatal depression. And I saw my mum going from fairly happy, fairly got it together person to just dying. Like her life was over essentially, and she never really got a lot of help with it. And I think with the church and the way things are, it's like if you're not happy, you don't have enough faith. It was like this weird belief that that was there.
Yeah, it's your fault or problem that you're feeling the way you are, or you're at the level that you are. Yeah,
I didn't even know what a psychologist was. Like as a kid, I just a psychologist was the devil. Like, I mean, that was just the way that I was brought up. And I don't think anyone actually specifically said that. It was just the way that it was presented. Like people with mental health issues just need Jesus, you know. that was what I was taught. I know, right? So messed up. So yeah, I really did think that I was going to die in childbirth, but having children, even though it's not what I wanted, it was exactly what I needed, because I had all that child sexual abuse, which really hadn't come out. I thought that was my shame that I was living with. And having kids really changed my perspective on what it is to be a child, and that when you are a child, you are blameless, you are innocent, and you are purely a reflection of the adults around you and how they show you what life is. And so then I reported it to the police, and it turned to this big court case, which was a successful trial and got a guilty verdict, and that person is now protected from children forever. And that was what we were wanting to do, is just make sure that
good.
Yeah, which you don't hear very often. A lot of these cases, it's he said, she said, really hard to actually prove. Less than 2% of these cases actually get to trial, let alone get a guilty verdict. So I am very grateful that things worked out well for me. But I also know that I had a husband and a man who stood by me when I became the absolute worst version. Like I was not the person that he met, you know, doing business with and being really entrepreneurial. I became a completely crushed human being, having to deal with all this dark stuff that came up, and he really took the reins and supported me on that. And I was able to do that because I had someone there supporting me like that as well, you know. And it made me, like, I think before him, I was trying to be really independent. Like, I don't need a man. I don't need anyone. I can do everything on my own. And I think there's a real tall poppy syndrome in Australia where, like, there is this sense of you have to be independent and do everything on your own. And becoming so mentally ill, I was seriously mentally ill. I still pretty much am, but like, you know, postnatal depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression and anxiety, severe depression and anxiety. Like, I was catatonic at moments after having babies. It was really, really serious. And I can't believe the guy stuck with me through all of that. And it was really hard for him to support me through all of that. But there were support places for him, support for me. And that also made us stronger in a relationship as well.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned going from relationships that didn't work out to one that is like the ideal? I don't mean to go back to your sex, the ideal fit, but actually like the ideal emotional fit as well. So what are some of the things you've learned in your journey?
I've definitely learned that opposites attract. So like the first boyfriend and I, we were really similar, and that worked on a friendship level, but it did not work on a relationship level. And so that was a really big lesson from that one. Even though my heart was absolutely broken because we were good mates, we just weren't meant to like be together as a couple. And then I think with the second relationship, I definitely learned how to not let people treat me. So I had to learn some value, and coming from a child abuse background, self-worth and value was very, very low. And it always has been for me. It's something that is common amongst all people who have been through trauma. Your self-worth and value is really challenging. Just being a female in general and having to be subject to the advertising that traumatizes us in the world, that tells us we're not good enough without their products. That in general, like, was really, really hard. And I had to kind of fight against that in that second relationship. And so I think that was the biggest thing I had to learn. And I only became aware of it really by comparing what it was like. It was literally chalk and cheese. Like, the way that he treated me in public around other people versus how he treated me at home and we weren't living together. We just spent a lot of time together. And I was like a slave to him. He treated me like his mother. I mean, the mother did the same thing. He just babied them. And maybe that's a part of her fault. Maybe she showed him that that's what women do. You know, I don't know. There'll always be a non-flow effect, but, and I have and he, you know, he did move out of home. He did better his life after me. Actually, apparently he was a good luck charm because his previous 3 girlfriends, all after they dated him, met the love of their lives, got married, and had kids.
Fantastic.
So this is the person I need to date.
Yes,
no.
you find him and then you find the one. Elizabeth, what did over the course of a well-told story, like sort of life lesson after life lesson sort of cropped up and popped up. What was your lessons learned for this week?
If people, my biggest lesson is that if people's behaviour in front of the cameras, so to speak, and behind the scenes don't match up, then there's something wrong.
Interesting.
I've
absolutely,
you know, I've dated people who are one way in public and a completely different way in private, and it's really hard to find your self-worth then, because when you try and tell anybody about it, they kind of don't believe you because they're Mr. Charming out in public, and it's just really hard to come back from. Yeah, it is. It's like they're gaslighting you about and everybody else about who they are. Like, you know, so it's like they almost lay this foundation so that it's impossible for anyone to believe you if anything major were to happen, you know, other than the emotional abuse, like if that were to escalate. And I also really like when you were talking about having him support you, the importance of being able to be there for someone when they are vulnerable. And I think being in a relationship where you feel safe to express that vulnerability is incredibly important.
That's so important.
Absolutely.
And, you know, like when trauma happens, like it can take a really long time before you share that with your partner, but it's always such a, you know, it might be difficult, but when you're with somebody that makes you feel comfortable and to be that vulnerable and share those stories, then that's probably a pretty great partnership to be in.
I agree, Liz. And a couple little lessons from me to wrap us up. to retouch on what Rae already said, similar but not compatible is an interesting, like, oh, I don't understand. Me and her, we're so similar. We have so much, but the relationship, so you can be similar but not compatible. So that's an interesting note to take home, everybody. And Rae, in your storytelling, you said the phrase, or something similar to, deciding to be happy. Now, and that's an interest, and I like that. And people, anyone with mental health issues will roll their eyes at that phrase, because when you're depressed and your mum says, "Oh, come on, love, all you got to do is be happy," like that. I'm not talking about that. Negative.
Not that type of decide to be happy, but decide to try. I guess
what you want.
My application would be, once upon a time in a different past life, I was an angry person. My default mood was just anger. I thought that's how I had to operate in the world. I had to fight and struggle against it. See, look at this. Look at the effort I'm putting in, everyone. Give me a fucking break. But it's like, no, you're just choosing to live like that, not actually. So there is something to be said about deciding to be happy, or deciding to be peaceful, or whatever it is,
deciding to let something go,
or deciding to rate, review, and share Ghosts of Boyfriends Past. I mean,
how dare you bring that in to this important moment that we're having?
It's all a choice, it's all a decision. But before we get on to kissing the bottoms of our readers, Rae, thank you so much for coming on our show and for sharing. It's hard to do.
Thank you.
Everyone has
I've gotten used to it.
It's really nice, and it's strange that I'm the one saying this. It's nice to have a nice story with a nice outcome for once, because normally Tom's Mr. Hearts and Flowers on this podcast, and I'm normally like the schadenfreude of watching everything fall apart. So it's actually I feel all nice and warm and fuzzy that you're in a situation with somebody who is incredibly complimentary to you, and you've got what you need in your life.
Oh, and look, so many people I know have looked at and watched our relationship, like on Facebook, and they've watched like, oh, they had a baby within a year of knowing each other, and then they got married and had 2 more, and they've got this amazing life, and everything looks so easy. It's like, I can do that. And we've actually had people who are like, they've fallen pregnant to a boyfriend after 3 months, and I'm like, we are definitely the exception to the rule. I'm just going to say that, like that is. It's not normal, and I'll tell you what, it has not been easy. It's been fucking hard. No. And we work, and we go to psychologists, and we go to couples therapy, and we talk, and we read books, and we go on date nights every other week.
Yes, healthy.
We work on our relationship, and if you are not both interested and invested in your relationship, it will fall apart. You cannot just get married or just have a kid and everything be fine. You have to work on your relationship, and if you don't, just forget it. Like relationships are hard. They're not meant to be easy. But
this is what you see on TV when people are just like, this should be easy. If it's not easy, we have to break up. I'm like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah, it doesn't
Nothing's easy. You got to work. Like you got to choose someone every day and work to make that happen.
Rae, we're going to take that 45-second soundbite of yours wrapping up at the end there and just play that before every Ghosts of Boyfriends Past episode. You just gave us succinct, just no bullshit. Just here's what you do, and it takes work. Fantastic. Heed those smart words, everybody listening at home. Elizabeth,
taking a deep breath out.
I think I think it's time to go. I mean,
I do.
The electricity bill's coming, and we got to
I've got a show in 30 minutes, guys. I got to go.
All right. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you,
guys. If you want to be a guest, you know where to find us. It'll be in the show notes this time. We're just going to love you and leave you.
Yeah,
thanks again, Rae,
Have a great one.
Keep communicating, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
La la la